Hi, friends, and welcome to the Out of OCD podcast, your source for understanding and managing obsessive-compulsive disorder. This podcast explores the realities of OCD, personal stories, treatment approaches, and tips for breaking free from those often debilitating intrusive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. I'm your host, Dr. Toy Hirschman, not a therapist, but someone who has also lived with severe OCD and co-occurring disorders. Please join me for real stories, pro tips, and a sometimes humorous look at busting through OCD. Let's get started kicking OCD out of our lives for good. Hi, friends, and welcome to the Out of OCD podcast. So today we're going to talk about, do I really need a therapist? Well, the answer to that has several answers. Many people don't want to go or can't afford therapy. There are so many more options these days, which is great. But honestly, even in my own town, there are no therapists that specialize in OCD. Seriously, none, not a one. The pandemic did open up the availability for more online treatment, and so that was wonderful. And that was the only reason I was able to find somebody that really saved me and really helped me. But I was still on a waiting list in several places to find that person. I truly did need my therapist. I believe that you need somebody, whether it's a certified credentialed therapist or a coach with lived experience, just someone that knows what you're dealing with is super, super critical. You need someone that's going to encourage you to keep up with your ERP, which is exposure and response prevention work, and to work on it every single day. So let's get into how to find the right person to help you. Keep in mind, if your insurance doesn't pay for therapy, there are other options. Therapy can be super expensive. Even sites like BetterHelp cost a bit of money. There are coaches out there with lived experience like me who are cheaper and in some cases more informed than some licensed therapists. From here on out, when I use the term therapist, I'm going to be referring to either a clinician or a coach, depending on the route you choose. From here on out, when I use the term therapist, I'm going to be referring to either a clinician or a coach, depending on the route you choose. You can also do both, and the coach can support you in between your therapy sessions, which is a strategy I would recommend. I had several people and different things that I did that supported me in between sessions as well. In no way am I harshing on clinical therapists. I credit my own with saving my life. However, it took a really long time to find her. And for 30 years, that's right, 30 years, whenever I would try to get therapy, often the person would want to just do talk therapy. And what that means is that therapists that I would go to for support would be really concerned about trying to figure out how I caught OCD, right? What was the source of my OCD? What trauma lurked in my background? And, spoiler, there wasn't any. I had a pretty normal childhood. I have a family history of OCD. So, but often these therapists would spend hours just talking about stuff that was fun to talk about. I mean, it was good to get it out into the open, but not helping me move forward in my OCD treatment. They never even mentioned ERP, and that's your first clue. So if you meet with a therapist for OCD and in the very first session, they don't even mention ERP or ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, do not walk, run out of there. I'm kidding. Be kind and leave, but don't return. You'll end up spending a ton of money and get nowhere. Now, you probably won't start ERP in your first session if you do find someone who is going to take you through that experience, but they will prepare you for going through ERP and let you know what that looks like, what it's going to feel like, and you'll start working on your hierarchy. I talk about hierarchy in previous episodes and on my YouTube channel, so check that out if you're not sure what that is. So whether you're working with a therapist or a coach, the first thing is making sure that you'll be doing ERP, right? So some other things to consider. How much experience does the person have treating OCD? This is kind of a big deal. You really want somebody that knows what they're talking about, whether they've lived with it and they know how to get through it, whether they've been a therapist for a while. It doesn't have to be a therapist with a bazillion years of experience, but someone that knows what they're doing. All right. Also to that, how much experience does the therapist have with different themes? Also not a deal breaker. But if your therapist or coach knows what they're doing, they should be versed in different types of themes and what they mean. A big deal is this next one. The relationship you have is so important. It must be a trusting relationship. You really need to be comfortable with your therapist on a personal level. It might take a few sessions to get there, but just be comfortable enough that you're willing to go through this ERP process, which is not going to be easy. So you want somebody that you trust and feel comfortable with. Does the person understand? Does your therapist understand about co-occurring disorders? I talked about this one in a separate episode, but more often than not, if you have OCD, you have co-occurring disorders. Whether for me it was an eating disorder and some other things. For other people, it's other types of anxiety and depression. But just make sure that your therapist understands that, and if you do have co-occurring disorders, make sure they understand that too. Some red flags, okay? If your therapist is strongly against medication and that's something you want to do, that's a red flag. Conversely, if your therapist is absolutely adamant about medication and that's something you're worried about or scared of doing, which was my case, those are two extremes and there's tons of room in the middle. And so your therapist should not be all or nothing. If your therapist seems annoyed that you're asking questions about ERP or ACT, you should go in there prepared. Watch this channel, do some research on your own, but go into your therapist prepared and know what you want to experience, okay? If you feel judged by your therapist, that's not going to work because you're not going to feel comfortable. If they cross any professional boundaries, again, making you feel uncomfortable or disregarded, keep in mind, though, exposure and response prevention therapy is uncomfortable, and you will have to go through that. But what I'm talking about here is just personal comfort, okay? If your therapist provides reassurance and therefore cheapens or undermines your OCD, no. Learning to get through the discomfort of ERP is the only way to get out of OCD. If they seem bored or annoyed, obviously red flag. And if they don't try to learn as much as possible about your specific experience with OCD, my own therapist told me that being an OCD specialist is a hard area to focus on as a therapist, and which is why most therapists don't focus specifically on OCD. The reason that it's so tough is because there are no two people with OCD who are alike, even with the exact same theme or themes. Your personal experience is very different from others, and you need to inform your therapist of your personal experience with OCD so that they know how to best treat you. It's interesting because I say sometimes, everybody wants to have everybody else's OCD, and even two people with the same, contamination theme or religious scrupulosity theme or whatever, those two people are still going to be completely different and will need a different treatment plan. So that's why it's very important to find the right therapist. Also, if your therapist or coach claims to treat everything, that's a big red flag. If you're with a generalist, you are not with a specialist. And that is so true. So you might not click with your therapist immediately. Again, it may take a few sessions for you to get to know each other, but after several sessions, you'll know if you're comfortable. And if you still don't feel okay, it's time to find somebody else. It can be really tough and frustrating to find the right person, but you have to be vigilant about getting better and getting out of OCD. So please do your due diligence and find the right person. And then just again, to reiterate, don't confuse discomfort you feel with appropriate exposure and response prevention treatment with comfort with your therapist, because those are two different things. So I hope this quick podcast helped. And, please go seek out the treatment that you need, whether it's from a clinical therapist or a coach. There are lots of options out there that didn't exist when I was first diagnosed at 12 years old, and I did not get the help I needed until in my 40s. So please don't be like me and spend that much time either just refusing to go to therapy or finding the wrong people and giving up. Find the help you need, and please reach out if you would like any advice, a coaching session, just want to email, whatever. I hope you find what you need, and I love you. Catch you in the next one.